When I thought of the X-Files initially, I had a specific series in mind I wanted to cover eventually, and like this video series namesake, the X-Files, it would also follow a duo tracking down and dealing with extraterrestrials. Today we open a very special X-File on Fusainaba's Aliens Area. Full name, Aliens Area. Start date, June 6th, 2022. End date, October 24th, 2022. Total chapters 21, including one bonus chapter split into 3 volumes. Fusainaba would debut in Jump with Peco Roller in 2012, it being one of the finalists of that year's Treasure Newcomer Awards. In the Jump Next 2013 spring issue, he would then put out Hirake Nyorai-kun before appearing again the following year with a shogi one-shot called Urushi. Naba would then release Kung Fu Master in Weekly Shonen Jump in 2015 and Taotao, a short serialization running in Jump Giga in 2017 lasting 3 total chapters, which follows a boy gaining powers after eating a peach. The following year would see Naba run in the 2018 Gold Future Cup with Apollo, the Gold Future Cup being a mostly yearly manga competition which I have a video on if you'd like to know more about it. Apollo feels like a loose pilot for Aliens Area, with it featuring a very similar character to Shiraku, mostly in design though. The general formula is also pretty similar, with the duo going to hunt ghosts instead of aliens, and the world building aspect is also a little similar. I think Aliens Area is a much better take on these ideas though. Fusainaba would then go on to do one more short serialization in the digital version of Shonen Jump called Harakiri Gomen. This 4-chapter miniseries followed a pair of samurai in the Edo period, with one wielding a heavy blunt blade used to destroy other swords, with them acting as a secret police officer taking out corrupt officials. A few years later in 2022, Aliens Area would debut, following Tatsumi Tatsunami, a third-year high schooler who is also in part-time work to look after his 2 siblings. On top of all of this, something is wrong with Tatsumi's hand. After getting cut at one of his jobs, it instantly heals. It's then after getting it checked out at the doctor's he meets the enigmatic Hajime Shiraku, a police detective who wants to talk to Tatsumi but he declines. Going home, he's then met by strange alien beings who want his hand, which has been embedded by a substance from outer space. When his siblings are endangered, it reacts, stretching out his new arm like it's super elastic to protect them, with Shiraku also appearing to make sure Tatsumi is safe and to let us in on some important info. He is with Section 5 of the Foreign Affairs Division in the Public Security Bureau, who are a task force that handle aliens, and Shiraku offers Tatsumi a job to work with them to preserve the peace between aliens and Earthlings. From this point on, we're introduced to the world of Aliens Area. Tatsumi gets a new apartment, his brother and sister are memory wiped, much like in Men in Black.
Sorry.
What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, right. Foreign Affairs 5 is full of staff plinking away at various duties, including producing all sorts of tools you'll see throughout the series, and we also get to see our extended cast, who honestly don't make much of an impression in the short time Aliens Area was serialized. I do appreciate the effort to immediately flesh out the organization though, as we meet a lot of characters from different parts of the Bureau, which help flesh it out immensely. It might be a bit slower paced than your usual battle shonen, but this change is really refreshing in my opinion. Between the bureaucracy and world building, we also get some really fun encounters with various aliens. They all stand out and usually possess different worldviews and are very interesting to glimpse into. Like early on, there's a small arc with a princess and an assassin which leads into a very fun fight. Fusainaba's art really shines here, especially with Shiraku, who is super expressive in combat. The use of the various alien tools also help in keeping the fights engaging and making it feel somewhat original compared to a lot of other series. It reminds me of World Trigger the most, which puts a larger emphasis on tools rather than some kind of defined fantastical power system. We also learn through this fight that Tatsumi possesses dark cells, a catch-all for anything that is unknown in the universe.
Agent Cooper?
Shelly, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. It's called Georgia coffee. Comes in a can. Tastes as good and rich as any cup of coffee I've ever had.
It's true.
Georgia ni makasero.
Accompanying its battle elements, Aliens Area is also a pretty good sci-fi and work drama series. It melds moments of the mundane with sci-fi in a really nice way. I love Shiraku and Tatsumi sharing a coffee at the end of the assassin fight, and the following chapter, chapter 8, is my favourite in the series, taking place entirely on a rice paddy where the crew is searching a field due to reports of alien activity. When an alien is found out to be behind it, instead of fighting, things are settled via discussion. Shiraku remarks that most aliens are friendly and reasonable. The Bureau exists to facilitate peace between them and humanity, so conflict is something they usually always avoid. This chapter, which deals with agricultural ideas of aliens, and the next involving a parking violation of a UFO that's a phone booth, are great. There's a laid-back feel to them both, and the approach to the world Fusainaba has created is a lot more nuanced than other manga might. Its approach to an exam, a classic shonen staple, is also a bit different feeling too, feeling more like a work formality while integrating its equipment system more. Here we see Tatsumi think outside of the box, which allows him to catch this ninja alien who eats cat food. While the series is usually pretty grounded and serious, it does have time for some nice funny jokes here and there. The next chapter also features aliens that eat cat food though, and the tone is a bit heavier. In this snack bar we meet a woman who's taking care of some aliens, and criticisms of the Bureau arise. While Foreign Affairs 5 has mostly been depicted positively up until now, it, like most of our human organizations in the real world, is by no means perfect, with them enforcing human law and customs upon aliens who aren't accustomed to them. It is of course fantastical, but you could draw parallels to real world society with groups that might enforce certain standards of living upon people of different cultures. I'm not very well versed or knowledgeable in political and humanitarian issues like this, but the worldwide immigrant issues come to mind. That's by no means the only connections you can make, and I'm sure Fusainaba had his own inspirations for the world and politics of aliens area from his neck of the woods. Regardless, it works though, as aliens can be a stand-in for any culture or none at all. You're free to back it up with real world context, or you can approach it from a science fiction angle, and because he's been so thorough so far in making the world feel well realized, this conversation in the bar lands really well. Through discussing more with this lady, who is named Akina, we learn of a group called A3, the Anti-Aliens Alliance, a group of people who aim to protect the planet from aliens, who also utilize dark cells in a healing process. Akina was once a member, and she's not happy about it in hindsight, but it seems the experience of being with them has made her a lot more empathetic to aliens, which is also thanks to her falling in love with one herself. She got help from another member of A3 called Yutaka and fled, but that's all the info these two get for now. These two chapters are some of Aliens Area's best, and they manage to world build really well while also setting up a great character in Akina, who gives us more perspective on the world and the issues it faces, which makes the twist at the end of chapter 13 all the more shocking. The bar suddenly bursts into flames, and Akina plus the aliens that live there are instantly incinerated. The perpetrator remains, but due to how the Bureau operates, Tatsumi can't do anything, further cementing how flawed the Bureau is, while also showing how deranged A3 is in their ideals in comparison, with the killer exclaiming that their organization is pure in their ideals. While I do find it a bit clunky after how grey the recent conversation has been, the display of pure evil is sickening, and it sets up a really nice villain. Even after this event as well, they still can't instantly go and pursue the killer. The motion needs to be approved at a meeting, as it's designated at a very high threat level due to its associations with A3. Also, Shiraku is posed exactly like how Mulder usually is when he's alien explaining in the X-Files here, and I love it to bits. We are then introduced to an even larger extended cast of the Bureau's group leaders. Here, Tatsumi's past is also revealed to be integral to the events with A3, as his parents were also members who helped some aliens known as the Mumerians escape. They, out of gratitude from being saved, managed to implant dark cells within Tatsumi in an attempt to save him, with the recent bar fire likely being a trigger in the memory's resurgence. The meeting we're presented with here is also really engaging. As it progresses, you're given a visual of who is for and against dealing with A3, and we basically get a mini 12 Angry Men style debate. It's simple but ultimately handled really well and bolsters Aliens Area's political side and the organization that is Foreign Affairs. Eventually though, the majority agrees that A3 should be dealt with and a siege begins on their base. Here we get a detailed rundown about each team in the organization before our main duo enter the final stage. There they're confronted by a gunman but receive backup from the assassin from the first half of the manga, which is a nice bit of continuity and helps the manga feel a bit more whole. Yutaka, the arsonist, and the man who helped Akina escape before basically set up a fiery death trap in which everyone inside the base will die, including himself. With no real way to outfight him, Shirako decides it's best to discuss and learn Yutaka's motivations. Aliens killed Yutaka's family, which led him to join A3 to take out his anger, but upon ranking up in the organization he learned that they also work with aliens. Their tech is invaluable and pivotal to this genocidal group, but to Yutaka, who is so radicalized, the group he stood for and the ideals he thought he stood for have been a lie. So in some twisted anguish, he aims to burn everything down. He killed Akina to lure in foreign affairs, and he also wants to take out A3 along with himself. Here we get a pretty nice piece of poignant dialogue. Shirako asks him if he wants to die, and his response is, "It's not like I want to die, but I don't want to live." He isn't a sympathetic character, but seeing him lose his connection to life and reality like this is potent. His plans end up falling through though, with some ingenuity on Shiraku's part, and even when Yutaka attempts to die of his own accord, Tatsumi ends up saving him. Tatsumi ponders over what Yutaka said, asking if it's acceptable for him to kind of understand how Yutaka was feeling. I don't think he necessarily agrees with him, but the empathy he showcases is seen to be positive. The Bureau and people in general can't go on resorting through violence and negligence. They need to do better to help more people and aliens through incorporating more empathy and by changing the system at its core. At least that's what I get out of the final chapter of Aliens Area, which sees this incident complete with the two walking off, ending the series. So why did it get axed? Firstly, people might have been expecting a more traditional battle series, and chapters like the rice paddy would have been a massive curveball. Rereading it, I actually think it's quite well paced, but it might be on the slower side as it takes a while for the series to really start to show its hand, and by that point a chunk of readers probably hopped off. A more minor complaint are its characters. While I do enjoy them, don't stand out much besides Shiraku, and while I do love Tatsumi's empathy, he comes across as bland throughout most of the series. At the time of its ending, Jump would also soon serialize 4 new manga in the magazine, wanting to inject it with new blood, but with most of the other shorter manga in the magazine already axed or too young to axe, Aliens Area definitely felt like the obvious choice to get rid of. I do think though it was different enough that it could have stayed, but sales and reception likely went high enough for Jump to warrant keeping it. While I do think in an ideal world it should have stayed, as its world was brimming at the seams to be explored, I'm not entirely sure it was a good fit for Jump, with manga like it being fairly uncommon I think. The closest manga to it I can think of is World Trigger maybe, which is quite technical in its world building and battle styles, but I think that gained a lot more popularity initially and it kept closer to usual shonen battle tropes at the beginning. But what does everyone else think about it? First off, the Discord server had quite a few responses this time. There was a lot of positivity mixed in with fair criticism I feel. While the battle aspects didn't click for people like Cody, they praised the political and detective side of things, as well as Naba letting his art breathe in the final chapter. Anime states it's their favourite act series, only citing its rushed ending as a negative and wished it would have gone on for longer, which is a sentiment most people seem to share. Xenomat being one of them, and I agree the alien immigration and overall political landscape would have been great to see if we got more chapters. They also bring up some issues with Tatsumi and how he is consistently upstaged by Shiraku, making a point that he barely uses his powers throughout the series. It's a fairly common criticism I agree with, and while I think he's less boring than some people make him out to be and acts as the reader surrogate character, something could have been done to make him a little more involved I think. Many people would also bring up specific scenes like Harley the Apothecary, who brings up the car scene at the end of chapter 9, and I definitely agree it really helps it lean into the work drama elements, and more of this could have resulted in some really compelling characters I think. Similarly, Kinocha brings up the bar arc and Akina, praising the moral complexity of her and the eventual twist. Millie had a lot to say about the series. I think it was all pretty fair, with them highlighting the series' differences from usual battle shonen as a strength, saying it might have been better to avoid the early assassin fight. Like many others, they also wish Naba luck in his new series, as does Ari, though they do mourn that Alien's area had to be sacrificed in the first place. They also comment on the political aspects potentially being a tough sell for Jump's readership, and that they could have been limited in this magazine. Witched Sarah also comments on the political and slice of life elements, saying they're all well handled, and Cactus chimes in to further praise the bureaucratic aspects as well as the art, but did feel the characters lacked development and the ending wasn't very strong. He also brings up that this is another main character with a superpowered arm, the second in a row we've covered here on the X-Files. YouTube similarly had a lot of people vouch for it as fans, My Name is Doofy included, gotta shout him out as he's one of Alien's area's biggest fans. In large part though, the bureaucratic elements were praised, the main villain was as well, as was the ending. Some comments were a bit more scathing though, saying it was uninteresting in its execution, below average, or had no real standout moments. I think Twitter, while having an overall larger pool of comments, had more negative ones also, some of which called it generic or said it meandered around too much. A lot of these comments I actually disagree with, and from the outpouring of love from the series, I think most would tend to agree too, as it was a fairly gripping series most of the time, with plenty of standout moments. People consistently bring them up, like the bar scene, the rice paddy, or the phone book chapter. As for its pacing, I think rereading it, it's actually really solid and doesn't meander at all. It's just a bit more episodic than usual. It's using that time though to build up its world, characters, and themes. Another point of contention was the action elements, and some also don't like the slower paced parts, but I think both are necessary for Alien's area to say its piece. It has to have violent conflict to contrast negotiation and peaceful solution. Alien's area has also had the most comments I've ever had for an X-File so far, and I think that's down to people really liking it, or it being interesting enough to invite some great discussion, which in the end is a lot more than most action and manga are capable of. Hang on, I think one more comment is coming in about Alien's area.
Hello, Earthling. I am an alien from another planet. At the present moment, I have changed into this mobile phone. While you are looking at my face, I am rubbing my testicles and making love to your fingers. Don't say you're not enjoying it, as I can see you smiling. Ah! Feel my passion, feel my passion. Ah!
Sorry about that, I have no idea how that happened. Alien interference, I guess. They are always watching, of course. Anyway, where were we? The next we'd see of Fusai Naba following the end of Alien's area would be in 2023 with the one-shot Mukuteru Aoi in Jump Giga. This might be my favourite of his works, following a boy who's tasked with burying his father, who gets mixed up with a dangerous hitwoman. I definitely recommend people check this one out. It's also a loose basis for Naba's newest series, Kyokuto Necromance, featuring a very similar pair of characters. Like Apollo to Alien's area, the stories are completely different, with Necromance focusing on necromancers, people who wield and fight off spirits. This is one of Jump's newer manga, and it remains to be seen if it will stick around or not, but there's a decent amount of support behind it, although a good chunk of people seem to prefer Alien's area with its more unique premise. Depending on when you watch the series, it could still be going or could be gone, but I wish the best for Fusai Naba and his manga. While that's it for Fusai Naba, there's also the issue of Shuiro no Kamen and the artist Nabana Naba, whose work bears a striking similarity to Fusai Naba's. This has been serialized in Young King Hours since 2021, predating both Alien's area and Necromance, and is still ongoing. It's untranslated, but it seems to be a battle manga focused heavily on masks, and could be more adult as it's from a seinen magazine. If we're lucky and Necromance hits it off, maybe someone will translate this, but either way, I think it's pretty interesting Naba is operating under a pen name and doing two series at once. And with that last surprise out of the way, we are done with the X-File on Alien's Area. A reminder, you can read both Alien's Area and Necromance officially on the Shonen Jump app. I would also like to recommend any fans of Alien's Area to try out the X-Files. It's the primary inspiration behind my X-Files series name, and if you like the idea of two FBI agents tackling aliens and dealing with government conspiracies, it's a great series to watch. It's also much more than that, but it makes sense for me to shill it considering the similarities to it and Alien's area. If you liked the video, consider subscribing as well and checking out my other Axe Files where I talk about all sorts of other Axe Shonen Jump manga. Or if you're more historically inclined, there's my History of Shonen Jump series where I delve into the magazine's past series. If you really love what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon, where you can get thanked at the end of videos with a little doodle like Kinocha, Cody, Kaizoku Gairu, Soraquil Zero, and Harley the Apothecary. Thank you all for supporting me, and as always, I hope you enjoyed. Remember to be kind and take care.